My Lords, I'd like to thank the Most Reverend Prelate for encouraging us to consider the question of asylum from a moral position. But I must warn those who've made such interesting maiden speeches, and I warmly welcome them, that debates in this House aren't always so erudite or ethical. On this issue, one concern, regularly when we discuss this topic, we're urged to deploy our moral sentiments in terms of feeling compassion for refugees. But might it be emotionally manipulative to suggest that policy should be decided by such one-sided emotional concerns? There are millions and millions of people who could have their lives enhanced if they lived in the UK. And when I watch the news and see the plights of those around the world suffering, I'm tearful. I want to do something desperately. But as the Archbishop himself admits, we cannot take all the world's suffering as refugees here. We have to prioritise. That doesn't make us immoral. I therefore feel uncomfortable when some accuse those who raise concerns about the numbers arriving in small boats as lacking a disposition of generosity or not caring. Isn't that demonising and dehumanising language too? Let's not pretend that this is an easy moral question. For all the moral righteousness expressed here today, can I ask, what is the moral difference between a man fleeing a war-torn country, considered legal, versus a man fleeing grinding poverty, which isn't? I think this highlights a moral problem thrown up by the asylum system. It treats the cause of someone fleeing a country as the basis for creating deserving and undeserving migrants. And it implies somehow a refugee is a worthy victim, worthy of our generosity, unlike economic migrants. I'm not sure the fashion for emphasising Jesus as a refugee helps, if I'm honest. It feels a bit of a cheap shot. I mean, didn't Christ allegedly die for us all? But this sanctifying narrative and the present system definitely incentivises anyone arriving to follow the script to claim they're refugees. But as Baroness Chakrabarti so well explained, people arrive without papers, without letters from a tyrant as evidence or what have you. There is a problem, and which is the system's open to abuse. If the host authorities say they will give asylum to Syrians, inevitably claimants from the Middle East will claim to be Syrians. If the rules say asylum will be given to under 18s, understandably young-looking 20-somethings will claim to be younger. In 2016, it was the Church of England clerics who warned about fake conversions from Islam to Christianity. In Nick Timothy's major report that was published this week, he notes that modern slavery laws are being abused. It's now standard advice to especially those coming from Albania to claim they're victims of trafficking. Noting those truths is not about blame. I don't blame people for trying their luck. They want a better life. No accusations of scroungers or invaders from me. But it's just simply disingenuous to suggest that the objectivity of the law is not being strained when determining asylum status is so difficult. And I'm especially worried when we gaslight the British public, who feel that some are gaming the system, and they're right to think that. And they also believe that no matter how many times they vote for control of our borders, they're being ignored at the expense of asylum seekers. When most people consider the original 1951 Convention for Refugees, the spectre of those flying the Holocaust death camps informed the spirit of never again, as many Jewish refugees were shamefully turned away. And British citizens understand that, and they understand those fleeing the bombs and terror of Putin's barbaric war in Ukraine, or there are obligations to those escaping the Taliban in Afghanistan and so on, and they are more than welcoming. But they are also, understandably, upset about the 40,000 crossing the Channel currently, who they know are not fleeing from the terror of the Nazis or the Taliban, but leaving peaceful France. And they are right as well to ask British politicians about their priorities. Did my lords see the film of the public meeting in Skegness recently called by the mayor in response to the local seaside hotels? Yes, there was a lot of hostility in that meeting, but that wasn't aimed at refugees, but at the local MP, and a frustration at a system where, without consultation, asylum seekers in their midst were being given free accommodation and utilities and 3 meals a day, while local people faced the desperate times and the brutal reality of austerity. Homelessness is on the rise in the town, and the interviews with the ex-veterans sleeping rough in Skegness also deserve our compassion and were heartbreaking. Of course, refugees aren't living in five-star hotels. I'm not suggesting that. But can we also empathise with the citizens who can't get to see a GP or get into A&E or get medical treatment for chronic pain when they're told that medical services are being made available to refugees in local hotels? Dismissing the plight and aspirations of our own citizens, so well articulated, I thought, by the noble Baroness Stroud, Stowell and Stroud, actually, is just as divisive and mean-spirited as using the language of invasion. This issue requires that we deploy a full range of moral principles. Our duties stretch beyond compassion for migrants. If we flaunt the democratic duty to uphold the integrity of national borders and treat the social cohesion of settled communities as a distasteful, inconvenient obstacle, we do indeed risk a backlash against all refugees and migration schemes, which would be terrible. In my view, we need a complete overhaul of the laws on the issue. At present, who is in control? Dr. Michael Nazir Ali, the former Bishop of Rochester, in his foreword to the recent pamphlet 3 Essays on the Morality of Asylum, wrote, "If people smugglers can simply nullify debated legislation and policy by landing people in small craft on the beaches in Kent, this cannot indefinitely be acceptable in a democratic, law-respecting nation." So I think Nick Timothy is right that if human rights laws or the 1951 Refugee Convention prevent us from democratically deciding our priorities, we must be prepared to leave both if necessary. Those who disagree, who think that there should be more refugees, should argue for that democratically and push that up the next election's list of things to be debated. But
she rather exceeded her time.
My Lords, I begin by declaring my interest as a member of your Lordship's